Hey, my name's Toni, and this is my Colin Archer 49. I live on it full time, and I've been living on boats for about 5 years, and it's been the best decision I could have made. I really love the lifestyle. It's a ferro cement boat, which means it's made out of concrete, and that's why a little guy like me could afford such a large boat. It's made out of concrete, which is cheaper to build. It was built to cross oceans, which I maybe would dream about doing at some point. But for now, the Salish Sea is really fun sailing grounds. It's a pretty sweet rig. It's just a sloop rig right now, so I just have the foresail and then a mainsail, and the rig is pretty fancy in that they're both furling sails, so it's pretty easy to single hand. All the lines run back to the cockpit really nice. I moor here in downtown Victoria in the Inner Harbour in the wintertime, and then in the summer I sail up between Victoria and the top end of Vancouver Island. And welcome aboard! This is the cockpit. I'm currently building an enclosure, so canvas, and then all four sides will be closed in, which is a total game changer for the wintertime, having a warm, dry, bright space. So I just started this year's garden. Yeah, lots of greens and lettuce, and I sometimes grow tomatoes too, strawberries. The most ambitious I got was squash 4 years ago. We have the furling main, and it's rare. It's furled outside of the mast, which I like just in case something went wrong. It's slightly easier to work on the sail being furled like not inside the mast itself. But yeah, it's a pretty sweet system having infinite reefing options with the furling. I have the helm back here, but it's hooked up through lines on the deck. So normally I have this disc attached to the wheel, and then I have these series of lines that run back to the tiller at the stern. It's a double-ended boat too, which I find is pretty sweet, and that's steering. Why do I live on a boat? For a few reasons. Housing security. I mean, it just feels really awesome to not have to be worried about getting evicted, or having to contend with rent prices going up. So I really love the security of like, this is mine and I can dwell here and feel a sense of security. So I really love that. And then also just for the sense of romance, I really love the wooden, oceany, tidal way of life. Just feels really cool to be so connected with the elements, and yeah, the lifestyle itself just feels like life in a really visceral sense, like the really extreme beauty and then extreme intensity of dealing with complicated weather. And then relatedly, the tactile, hands-on nature of living off-grid, I think is really beautiful in a world where we are so disconnected from our bodies, from day-to-day life, from the weather. I really like refusing to be dissociated from that. It feels really medicinal and important. Knowing how to fix things feels amazing, especially as a young woman who wasn't brought up to know how to change a tire, let alone, fix an engine or like completely renovate a marine head. It's skills that I never expected to be able to know how to do. And it's really, really empowering having that kind of knowledge. What I love about this boat is all the wood inside. I really love having a kind of cabin feel to it. Super cozy. So this is the Galley. It's really huge. It's definitely the biggest kitchen I've maybe ever had on my various off-grid living situations. So it's really sweet. Like, I have a full oven and cooktop stove. It's gimbaled like you've maybe seen in other boats, because you really need it occasionally if you're trying to make eggs in big seas. Your eggs could end up on the ceiling, so it's really sweet to have the gimbaled. I have, for the first time, I've had several boats, but they never had water on an electric pump, so I feel like a pretty fancy guy. Yeah, I find the sinks are big enough that I can do laundry by hand in the sinks, which works out pretty well. So I've got fresh water running through these lines, And then I have salt water coming through here, which is another sweet brass item. It's not running right now because I've just been renowing the head. So I had to close the seacock so I don't have salt water coming through anymore. But I'll hopefully get it up and running again soon. Endless projects, tons of storage space, really pretty stained glass. Little vintage spice rack. Yeah, pots and pans, cutlery, cat food. I've got a fridge over there. Currently it's on 120 volt because I'm hooked up to shore power right now, but I'm gonna upgrade to 12 volt fridge in a couple months before the summer sailing season kicks in. If I would give advice to someone who wanted to live on a sailboat, as much as I love to say a big yes to grand adventures and the romance of all of that, I would definitely say start slowly. Like don't get a sailboat and try to cross the ocean, right? You know, it's like kind of intense. Like the kind of stuff I've had to deal with is really scary. So I would say, yeah, start gently. And what I really encourage for anyone who's wanting to get a sailboat and get into sailing is having good mentors. That's what saved me. I wouldn't be here whatsoever if it weren't for having good mentors. And so, finding ways of getting into community and finding people who can teach you stuff and being reciprocal about receiving that kind of teaching has been huge. So I really recommend that. And again, I think that's another thing that makes this lifestyle really unique is the fact that mentorship in general isn't something we have access to normally. Like, oh, you Google everything, or, you know, having that kind of real, like, relational exchange of knowledge and support is so tangible, so fundamental, so life-saving, truly life-saving. So I really love also the way that there's such a humanness, and it's so palpable. I would say that's a really critical piece, is moving slowly and having good mentors. And under here I have my engine, and it's an Isuzu, and she purrs like a kitten. My top speed is around 7 knots, which is nice. Thankfully, I haven't really had to do a ton of work on this engine, but on previous boats that I've had, has just been like hundreds of hours curled up in a tight ball in the engine compartment, sometimes 8 hours a day. And so surprisingly, I get to say that I'm a half decent diesel mechanic, which is something I'm really stoked on because I didn't grow up with any access to trade skills whatsoever. So it's totally empowering to know how to, you know, bleed injectors and do oil changes and, you know, replace the coolant hose system. And yeah, it's like tons of fun doing mechanical work, which I never thought I would say. Challenging aspects of this lifestyle have been overwhelm. Sometimes if I have 20 things that are broken on the boat, I don't know how to fix any of them, for example. It's intense. You know, especially since I go to school and work, yeah, I find that really tough when a bunch of things need my attention and I don't know how to address them all. I find that really hard. I also find that challenge is really beautiful because it forces me to be present and it forces me to grow constantly. Honestly, my approach to problem solving has really benefited from living on a boat. My problem solving approach used to be, I don't know how to do this thing. I'm going to wait until someone comes along and does it for me. This very dissociative, hands-off approach, where I don't see myself as part of the solution, or I don't see myself as having the wherewithal or the skills or the patience or the courage to engage. So it's been amazing to counter that. The positive self-talk that I do when I'm working on something is automatic now. Whereas when I first started, you know, what might have taken me 2 months to do, like rewiring some solar panels, now I can do in like half an hour, you know, because I'm not caught in the, you know, the storytelling and the beliefs that I can't do it, I don't have what it takes. So that's been a huge challenge and ongoing, but totally transformative, to the point where I've boiled it down to 2 ingredients to fixing stuff. One, have the right tools. You know, it's yeah, that's as simple as that. Number two, believe that you can solve it and believe that you can solve the problem. With those two things, I've been able to do all kinds of stuff. And now for the most exciting part of the tour, the head, which for folks that aren't boaty, is the toilet. Um, the washroom compartment used to be at the head of the boat, which is why it got that name. Anyway, I've been renovating it. I have this bathtub in here that I should be able to get functional within the next couple weeks, which is going to be extremely luxe and bougie. I'm really excited about that. And I just put in a composting toilet. So that's been a really nice upgrade as of the last few days. Definitely not the most romantic day of my life, pulling out the old toilet that had been there for a few decades and putting in a new one. But it's nice to have the composting toilet. I like it because then I don't need to have a holding tank taking up space. The holding tank used to be under my bed, which just wasn't a nice vibe, sleeping on top of you know what. So yeah, the composting toilet's been really good for me so far. So here we have a really beautiful set of shells for charts. And when the boat was made, it was set up to sail across the Pacific to the Philippines and the South China Sea. So it was filled with charts of like narrow entrances to very particular bays in the South China Sea, which is pretty interesting. Maybe one day this boat would get there. But yeah, for now, I just put my tools in there. I have 3 deep cycle batteries and I don't have a whole lot of fancy appliances on the boat, so I don't need a ton of power. Yeah, 3 deep cycle batteries. I wanted to install a whole bunch of solar panels on the boat. So thankfully the arch was already there. It was a radar arch, but I just pulled that off and moved it and then put 2 400-watt solar panels on that arch. Yeah, that install was sweet, been holding up good, and even in pretty big weather, it was solidly on there. But it's always tricky the first sail. I kept looking back, like, are the solar panels still on the boat? Yeah, it's been good. I love that with the boat I can get to places where I normally wouldn't get to and been able to be exposed to so much beauty and in touch with so much magic. It's been really, really special. Even jobs, like I've gotten to have jobs where I've done salmon restoration work with First Nations or getting to meet people like in very salty, soggy, misty places and seeing amazing wildlife. And oh, it's so heart-filling getting to be amidst all of that wonderment. Oh my gosh. It's really special. Other parts, like I've mentioned a lot about how I've grown so much, like the kind of strength and courage that I feel I've gotten to step into has been really huge, like really, really huge. Especially with a big boat, like a 50-foot boat for a small little person like me. It's been, overwhelming for sure, but totally incredible. And I don't know, I mean, being able to very consciously step into situations that are scary, I really get a kick out of it, to watch myself expand into like a bigger sense of self, and it's introduced me to such amazing people. The kind of mentors that I've received like hundreds of hours of mentorship from people in the community, and that's been totally gorgeous. Like the level of love and trust and reciprocity that is effusive in this lifestyle is amazing. I think the biggest thing I really love about this lifestyle is it is basically saying a big no to the lifestyle of paying rent and being a bit like removed from like the physicality of life. Go to work, pay rent, don't think too much about anything. It's just a really helpful way of keeping people trapped within an economic system. And so I really love the fact that these kinds of off-grid lifestyles allow for, I guess, this idea that you don't have to play that game. And it's really important, especially because it's so life-giving. It's so life-giving to step away from the cookie cutter set of conditions. And back here are the captain's quarters. Um, yeah, here's my little bedroom. It's super cozy. And then back here is the saloon, as they call it. Red velvet that I thought was really extra, but now I super dig. It's pretty sweet. And then I have tons of storage under here. I got power tools under all the settees. A little library. Yeah, I've been known to host some parties aboard. I had 30 people here at one time for a party. It was pretty fun. I would say that my personal philosophy is about joy in service. I really love feeling so much love and oxytocin flowing through me when I'm connected with people and and projects that I really believe in. Um, and the boat and the lifestyle is related to that, you know, trying to push back against systems of oppression, trying to push back against ethics that I think are rooted in profit and exploitation. Whereas the alternative to that is, I've said these words a few times, is reciprocity and care and growth and connectedness. And that's why even the boat, I'm calling it kinship. Yes, cheesy, but I really believe in it, you know? So in my free time, you know, I try to be connected with land back projects and Indigenous resistance against land theft and Palestinian solidarity work. And I'm training to be a counselor, focusing on social justice issues, because I really believe in the power of love. I really believe in the power of joy, and I often think about my ancestors and their long-standing struggle to hold on to love and well-being and rootedness and connectedness, with seasons and kinship networks, as a way of sense-making in a world that wants to be void of sense. So I find all of that really grounding and really informs why I wake up in the morning and try to move in the world with a lot of love and with a lot of courage. And it fills me up. There's been a lot of beauty. And this is a diesel heater. It's like Dickinson stove. And it just runs off of a day tank that I have, that's split between the engine and this diesel stove. And it works pretty well. It keeps the place toasty. It gets cold in the rooms at the end, but just put an extra wool blanket on your bed and that'll do it. But yeah, I had a wood stove on another boat, and it was very romantic, and I love romance, but it was a lot of labor, rowing around in the winter storms with a bunch of soggy wood in my rowboat. It's a lot, and I have big respect to the people who do it, but living full time on anchor with a wood stove was a lot if you're also trying to have a job and go to school and all that other stuff when daily life becomes your full-time job. Just like always about trade-offs in off-grid life, you know, comfort versus all of the labor that goes into making the life feasible. Yeah. So I'm really happy to be a little bit lazier and have diesel. I'm also excited that I have a guest room. I really feel like a fancy guy. So back in here through the little elf door, I have two beds here, one here, and then another one here. But the cats really love it. I have three little kitties. They're super sweet. And then I have back through here, I have my anchor locker, and a bit more storage space. Yeah, this is Maeve and Guinness and Barnacle. She's the mom of the two of them. And her story is kind of funny. She's Maeve. Maeve is quite the adventure cat. One time she was in heat and we were on anchor and anchored off of a reserve where there's a bunch of male cats that had the seed, and she jumped ship. She swam to shore, and she was on shore for 3 days, and it was a scary time for me, but I did find her, and yes, she got pregnant, and that's how we have these little guys. She's quite the creature. This here is the atlas bone of a humpback whale that my buddy and I found on the beach, the whole whale. And yeah, it was quite something to come across this whale. It was at around 6 in the morning with this fuchsia pink sunrise and a rainbow over top of this really precious cosmic being. It was pretty trippy coming across this humpback whale because, I don't know, you sail around and you see a lot of whales and that's really sacred, and then to be next to one on the beach is just trippy because you're not, I don't know, you're not supposed to come in such close contact with such miraculous beings. So it felt really special, but also sad. It was hard for me to make sense of the enormity of the situation, and grieving the death of the whale felt complicated. And it was really special. At one point, a few minutes later, Numke's First Nation kids, the knowledge holders, came and conducted a ceremony, and we were invited to participate, which felt really special. And contextualizing the situation with the whale, contextualizing relationships between Kwakwaka'wakw people and whales, felt really helpful for making sense of the grief and making sense of the miraculousness of whales. Yeah, that ceremony felt really special. And we went back a few weeks later, and the whale had just been decomposing, and so it feels really special to have this bone of the vertebrae, and then imagining how huge and heavy it is, imagining the rest of the spine. It really feels like a big deal. I'm grateful to have this. This lifestyle has taught me a lot about the idea of responsibility. And it's funny because, you know, in dominant culture, responsibility gets a bit of a negative rep. Responsibility is bad. It's better to, you know, be free. But to me, I would change the definition of freedom and responsibility. I think, like, you know, having this huge boat to take care of is like an enormous responsibility. And I love that. It teaches me about really showing up and about taking myself really seriously, and like really rejoicing in, you know, being, it just gives me a sense of purpose, and really that like feels so good. And I would equate that with this philosophy on life, you know, and responsibility and like joy in service. I feel like it makes me feel really dignified when I have huge responsibilities that I must show up for, and I have to see myself as someone who's deeply dignified and skilled. And to me, again, that like counters this narrative from, I don't know, the paying rent and showing up for a job that you don't like and numbing out at the end of the day because it's all overwhelming. Much rather go about the world with a very sober look at, you know, what does it mean to be really dignified, and say no to what you don't believe in, and say yes to like what you know to be beautiful.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please share it with a friend. Also, if you want to watch more alternative dwellings, we got a playlist popping up right here, and we release new episodes every single Sunday, so consider subscribing.